Assalamualaikum and hello everyone. You are watching NST TV with me, Arfa Yunus, and we have a special guest joining us today. He has made a name for himself through his involvement in the Malaysian political landscape, but his life, especially when growing up, is quite fascinating. You may know him as a minister under the Pakatan Harapan government, but his family history is very colourful and not known to many. And a long time ago, his parents and grandparents were among those who were actively involved in helping Muslim pilgrims perform their Hajj in Mecca. So decades ago, before pilgrims could just hop on a plane and go to the Holy Land, Malaysian, Thai, Singaporean and Bruneian pilgrims would go to Leboh Aceh in Georgetown, Penang, where they would travel on a ship to Jeddah, which took them 3 months to arrive. At Leboh Aceh, this minister's family was among those who eased the travel, helped with the pilgrims' Hajj courses, and sometimes when a pilgrim faced a terrible situation where they did not have enough money, a place to stay, or even food to eat, his family would come to the rescue. His family helped these pilgrims before there was Tabung Haji, and little did he know then that one day he would be in charge of Tabung Haji, and that person is Minister in Prime Minister's Department in charge of Religious Affairs, Datuk Seri Dr. Mujahid Yusof. Datuk Seri, thank you so much for being with us here today.
Thank you very much.
So Datuk Seri, what is it like to have such an illustrious family background? And I heard that you spent some time in Iran when your father was the ambassador there.
Well, as you rightly mentioned it, I grew up in a situation where my father and previously my grandfather was at the epicenter of the Hajj activities. That was, to be exact, in Leboh Aceh, which is now registered as the World Heritage Site. There used to be a mosque there, which is already 200 years old.
By that time?
No, now.
Now, okay.
So it is called Masjid Melayu Leboh Aceh, and our father, my grandfather's shop was just in front of it, and there were a row of shops who offered a lot of business such as books, Islamic books, and other needs for the Muslim, textile and all that. So during the Hajj, before the existing of Tabung Haji, this was the place where everyone would convene before they depart to the port for Hajj. There would be a very busy activities there, such as visas, such as those called Sheikh Haji, who will take all his people to Mecca, and there would be other activities of business and trades, selling books about Hajj, and people giving sermons on how to perform the Hajj during that time. So it is usually that before, let's say, a month or so, they go to the Penang port, they would be gathering there. And of course, not just my father, the whole of the Rawa family, which occupies most of the place there, will provide them also places to stay and rent them a house or something. So I grew up within that that busy situation where that place itself was named as Mini Jeddah, and my father was at the center of it because we had 2 row of bookshops where people would come and buy books there, and also sometimes would ask some services. Since my father is also known to be the head there, so they would just come and maybe ask some advice or anything. Of course, as you said, within that, there's not just Malaysian. They are from Thailand, they're from Brunei, who will commence there to gather there before they go to Hajj. So there are a lot of varieties of people who comes, and those days when they want to go to Hajj, it's not easy like today. Sometimes they get stranded months and months. Sometimes they had to travel from their places, maybe take them maybe 2 months or 3 months. So usually when they come there, they will have people who are in a difficult financial situation that they couldn't make it to Hajj. So sometimes they would just come and see my father, And it all depends on how he sees the situation for such a person. Then, of course, the fact that he felt very pity of their whole traveling coming and suddenly got stranded just a few kilometers away to the port. And then he would, of course, render his service to them, make things easy for them, especially when they are in the financial difficulties. And I didn't know all this until there were few people when they knew me as the son of Haji Yusof, my father. Then this stories about how my father helped his father, how my father helped his grandpa. So that's how I know. Because we didn't know what our father was doing those days, but then of course it was a telltale story among those people who was, who was helped by my father. And of course there are people who sometimes don't have things to eat, so at the most we would just give them food. My mother would just cook for them and give them food among other with the people around there. So I think it is a very, I think, colorful actually environment back then before Tabung Haji was then formed. And the visa problem they had to settle, and then they have to buy tickets for the shipping and all that. And of course, before they didn't have cars. They do have cars, but sometimes I still witness they were using the bullock cart to pull all the baggage and luggage straight to the port. So it was just like about maybe 3 or 4 kilometers from the port. So then, of course, I witnessed all that, and the fact that today I'm given such tasks to look into Tabung Haji was something that I think I'm honored, but also I have this feeling that I should, do my duty as my father had done before.
Yeah, bless him, bless your mother. Datuk Seri, if there is one lesson that you could share with us that you learned from your father, what is it?
A lot. But on top of that is, I think my father had this attitude that he would give concern to other more than to himself or even to his family. I think that really gave quite a big lesson to me, and he always advises this on this. I think he's always concerned on the poor people. I would know that previously at his bookshops we had 2 rows of bookshops, which is a very busy one because it sells Islamic books, especially the Jawi books, and also other Islamic books that all over the country from the school, Islamic school, Pondo or anything, they would come and buy from this shop. So you can imagine how busy the shop is. But he would always have his everyday income from the shop. He would just put aside few cents, shillings or dollars just in the box, so that he, during Friday prayer, would use that money to give out to the poor. That's what he does every week.
Every single week?
Every single week. So all his income for that day, he would put some amount in one place, and then
like a pouch?
Like a pouch, something I was going to say that. It's like a pouch. I remember that pouch because I was also given the task to distribute the money to the poor, because usually every Friday he would give sermon there, the mosque there. He would wear all his attire, the long robe with the outside of the attire. And then they would see a line of poor people up to the mosque, to the steps of the mosque. So he would walk, because our shop is just in front. He would walk and everyone would just in line. He would give this money that he collected all the week out of his income from the bookstore, and give it up to the poor people. I remember doing that the same also. Sometimes he would just say, okay, Mujahid, go and distribute to them.
How old were you then?
I was like maybe 12, or maybe later on 14. So yeah, I already know. I mean, I was given the trust to do so. And of course, he would say that I don't want to have any extra back to me. Finish it off, he said. So I think if it was any lesson that I learned, then you have to learn the lesson to always see the needs of the poor, and do not think of yourself, but also think of others as important to yourself. That's how I think impacted to my life as a politician.
Right.
He would just say to me sometimes, look, if someone asks you for money, sometimes you wouldn't know whether he's genuine. He might just, fake. But he said, look, okay, if he fake, then that's between him and God.
True,
but what happened if he is really in hunger, and you is really in hunger, or he is really in the dire needs of the money? If you don't give them, what happened along the way if he dies? Or what happened along the way? Something bad happened to him. Who's going to answer that?
The guilt.
The guilt.
Yeah.
So he said, anyone who comes, give them.
Yeah.
So that's how I was brought up in
It's
that.
a very good lesson.
In that situation. Yeah.
Well, Datuk Seri, okay, moving on to politics. You started your political career in the opposition, and you were also part of the formation of Amanah after the falling out with PAS. So the main issue with PAS in the Pakatan Rakyat at that time was the cooperation with DAP. But now that you are working with ministers from DAP, do you see PAS's beef with DAP has merit?
Before?
Now that you see it,
okay.
do you think it has merit?
You see, when we form, just to recapture, if we can just go a little bit backward in history, before the forming of Pakatan Harapan, or prior to that Pakatan Rakyat, there was Barisan Alternative, don't forget that. That is exactly post 1999 election, I think it was the 10th general election, we had this pact with DAP and PKR under the formation of Barisan Alternative. It didn't work out well. Somewhere along the way, it broke out because the issue was about Islamic State. DAP couldn't accept the fact that the manifesto for PAS was to establish an Islamic State, so they broke away. Then we tried to glue them back together with the formation of Pakatan Rakyat. And then PAS was among the three component party, the AP, PAS, and also PKR. Now, during that time, there was this understanding that each party, everyone should respect their own ideology, but we were looking more on the electoral pact, so that we have the advantage of going into the election 1-to-1, means to say no more one Barisan and three opposition, or two opposition, so it's like 1-to-1.
Yeah.
That was the whole idea of this electoral pact. Also, Pakatan Rakyat it did well actually in 2008 election. We denied 2/3 of the Barisan dominancy, and in 2013 it continued, and we gained more seats in that 2013 election. But right after 2014, there was also a misunderstanding between PAS and DAP. I was there. We tried to patch up things so that this coalition do not break, simply because the people felt very bad that they had given the trust to Pakatan Rakyat to win quite a majority of seats in the parliament. We didn't get the government, and then they felt such as being betrayed, because after you win, then you quarrel again.
Yeah.
So I think the people had all the right to believe that way. So we tried to patch up things. We tried to make DAP and PAS, try to negotiate, work together again, but it didn't happen. It was in 2014, I think, the Pakatan Rakyat broke out, and at that point of time there was a void in the pact. PKR, DAP, and PAS was out of the game, and the people didn't like that very much.
Yeah.
And that is why, at that particular point, we thought of having few options. Either we try to patch back Pakatan, or there was an idea at that time that we form a new party, because at the same time, PAS was having some internal problem. So those who were then labeled as pro-DAP, pro-Anwar, pro-Pakatan, few of them, which is the Amanah leaders today, we were being, I think, sidelined during the party election. Then we had few options whether to stay on or to see the bigger picture on how to patch up against the collusion. So what happened was to make matters short, we decided to form a new party. That is Parti Amanah Negara. And then we, prior to that or later on, we continue to make sure that Pakatan Harapan is formed. And that's why you have, after Pakatan Rakyat, in 2015, you have Parti Amanah. And then just about few days after that, you have the new Pakatan Harapan. So I think if you look at it today, we managed to get the government, or to win the majority and got hold as a government. It is because of this pact between the three parties. And then of course then Bersatu came in late 2017 or early 2018 to form a new party. Then they joined the coalition. Then we have the Pakatan Harapan as a 4-component party, PKR, DAP, Amanah and Bersatu. For PAS, I think they know who DAP are, because they had been together since Barisan Alternatif, Pakatan Rakyat. I just couldn't understand why today that the PAS is so against DAP in terms of its point of view, which I think sometimes is just inappropriate, because they know DAP a long time ago, but suddenly now, because they wanted a new coalition with UMNO, so they had to think of some black sheep in the, among the four. So the two black sheeps are Amanah and also DAP. So that's how you see them now hammering us.
But do you think that with Amanah cooperating with DAP is damaging Amanah's image? Do you think so?
I don't think so, because if you look into the history, every pact that we made an agreement is not based on any party dictating any party. It is based on understanding. It is based on our common ground. It is based on our common platform. What do we aspire? What do we do when we win this election? What is the best that we want to rebuild this nation? So Amanah, DAP, and PKR came together within this framework, not on the framework of whether one should dictate others or one should be dominant over others. So your question will go back to the fact that we made this pact together, we agreed on the common platform together, and the manifesto says it all. We came in the last election with one slogan, with one banner, with one manifesto, and with the clear way forward that if we win, Prime Minister will be Tun Mahathir Mohamad, and the succession will be Anwar Ibrahim. So there is no regret on what we have already achieved. We should cherish this and move forward. So the fact that people are saying whether our togetherness with DAP is damaging, no, it is not damaging. But it is the perception out there that wants us to perceive, or wants the people to perceive that it is damaging. So that's why you see the perception out there. They are bringing the perception that DAP is the sole problem maker in Pakatan Harapan, or they would say Amanah would be the dictated by DAP. These are all actually narrative to create, I would say, disharmony in the Pakatan Harapan, But we stood by with our promises and with our agreement, with our common policy.
Yeah.
And it's now time to fill in the victory on how to rebuild the nation again.
Datuk Seri, since you mentioned that there are stories that have been going around saying that some DAP leaders are giving a hard time to Prime Minister Tun Dr. Mahathir Mohamad. So how true is this story actually?
There are a lot of stories going on. That's just one of them.
Yes.
So you see, since we take over the government, you find a lot of stories going around. And the narrative to all these stories is just one. What is it? The story is that we have been pressured by one party who are Chinese dominated, and at the end of the day, they are going to take over the country. They even dictate Prime Minister Mahathir for whatever they want. For me, I think this story is more of trying to create doubt about our capabilities. And it goes back to the racial lines to create this perception that the current government is not strong and they are being dictated by DAP, for example, which is not true, definitely. Because when you are in the cabinet, everything has been tabled down and everyone would make decision not based on the interests of their party, but will make decision on the interests of the nation. We see things not on the racial line, but we see things on the greater interests of the nation. Yes, DAP has his ideas, Amanah has their ideas, Bersatu has their ideas, PKR has their ideas. So every ideas has been debated in such a manner that at the end of the day, Tun Mahathir will have to make a decision. And Tun Mahathir, being the person who hears every corner in the cabinet room, every point of view, will finally then conclude what is the best way to address this issue. That's all there is to it.
Yeah.
So there is no question of pressuring the Prime Minister to decide on something. And I think this is just more of an imaginary sort of a perception that finally wraps up to the narrative that Tun is not capable. The Malays are at stake, and it's the AP who's controlling everything. Well, that's what they want to people to believe, which I deny totally. That doesn't happen.
Datuk Seri, what do you think of Pakatan Harapan leaders who openly rebuked the Prime Minister on certain issues, for example, on issues concerning Ramasamy? Does it not affect the ruling party's solidarity?
Well, you see, in Pakatan Harapan, there is philosophy that we practice, not like the previous Barisan Nasional. That philosophy is every party is equal. No party is dominant over another. That is a very important philosophy here. People don't understand this, because if there is any party who is dominating upon others, that will totally create another different implication altogether. But in Pakatan Harapan, we have agreed that all parties are equal. They may have small numbers, but they are equal in terms of their opinion, in terms of their views. And we practice freedom of expression. But the fact that finally, whatever Ramasamy said, or whatever Mat Sabu said, or whatever Anwar Ibrahim said, doesn't represent, at the end of the day, the united stand of Pakatan, because we have two platforms where all these are discussed. One is in the cabinet. If it was something that is concerned with the national policy, then it is brought to the cabinet attention. Second platform is the Presidential Council, where 5 leaders from each party will sit down and thrash out any problem on the issue that is faced by each party. So whether it is Ramasamy or anyone who give their point of view outside this circle, well, they're free to give their point of view. But that doesn't represent what we believe or what we stand for. And that is why at the end of the day, Tun Mahathir has said this very clearly. Ramasamy can say whatever he wants to say, But at the end of the day, if it is something that is in concern of our national policy, then it is decided by the cabinet. And that is exactly what Mahathir had said, and I'm repeating what he's saying. So we in Pakatan Harapan do not say to our members, shut up. You know, don't ask anything. Just accept and keep quiet. They have their point of view. And as long as that point of view doesn't influence the whole ideals of Pakatan Harapan in terms of what it fought for, and it doesn't jeopardize the national security or whatever, then everyone is open to his opinion. But at the end of the day, it must be brought to the platform where every party will agree. And this is exactly my response to your question about rebutting whatever stand that has been taken by the minister or the prime minister. I mean, in fact, in my ministry, there are opinions outside among the Pakatan Harapan who doesn't maybe agree with certain policy that we have taken. But at the end of the day, when it is being considered as a national policy accepted by the cabinet, then it becomes the whole responsibility of the four parties to defend that decision.
Datuk Seri, there's an article that I read recently. So apparently there's been a debate on whether or not Dewan Himpunan Penyokong PAS or DHPP was your original idea. Some say it was your idea, some say it was Prof. Dr. Zulkifli Mohamad who came up with the idea in the 60s. Would you mind clarifying this confusion?
There is no confusion. Basically, Professor Dr. Zulkifli Mohamad, who came up with the idea way back in the 60s about PAS to open up its membership to the non-Muslim. I mean, that was more radical than what I had. He said that as an Islamic party, we should open up our membership to the non-Muslim. But that idea didn't go through. PAS didn't accept such ideas way back in the 60s. So when I was the head of National Unity Bureau, I read his ideas, and that's it. It's good. I mean, he's ahead of his time. And Professor Dr. Zulkifli Mohamad, yes, everyone would concur with me that he is ahead of his time. It was, I think, when I took over National Bureau, I tried to digest his ideas on how PAS can become a national party rather than a party just for an exclusive just for Muslim. I gave my paper actually during PAS retreat in 2009, if I remember, that I proposed them three options. Either have the non-Muslim as my member in my bureau. That's one option. Either have a special wing for them that will be larger so they can move more freely within the party's organization. Or the third option, which is very radical, similarly to what Professor Zulkifli Mohamad has said, that open up the membership for everyone. Now, the last option it didn't go through even today, because PAS thought that by being an Islamic party, opening up the door for the non-Muslim to become a full member would have some implication. The first option about the bureau itself will handle the non-Muslim within its bureau jurisdiction. It will be very small, and the non-Malays or the non-Muslim would feel that they are really not being appreciated. So the middle option, second one, was the best, because they agreed that we can open up a wing by itself, and all of them can become the member. They can just practice as any other member in PAS, except that they are not a full member party, full membership party. And so that's how the name Dewan Himpunan Penyokong PAS was formed, as an extension to the idea of Professor Dr. Zulkifli Mohamad. I digested it and I tried to operate it, and alhamdulillah, PAS has a wing today, which is multiracial, and I felt that that was my little contribution to my previous party.
All right. Datuk Sri, on the recent exchange between YB Lim Kit Siang and Datuk Sri Abdul Hadi Awang over his involvement in the International Union of Muslim Scholars, IUMS, do you agree that IUMS should be included in the white paper on terrorism that was suggested by YB Lim Kit Siang?
The International Muslim Scholars Association, Al-Ittihad Al-Ulama Al-Alami, is based in Doha, Qatar. Previously was headed by Sheikh Yusof Al-Qaradawi, and is recognized in Qatar as a respected body of scholars internationally. They have branches all over the world. They do a lot of publication. They do make a lot of stands on issues relating Muslims. I was told that in America they are being put in the list of the terrorist group, but I do not see any reason for such a respected organization of Islamic scholars who have very great influence in their thoughts in the Muslim world to be banned or considered as a terrorist group. But nevertheless, that one would be determined by the national security policy, whether such organization poses a threat to the national security, whether there is any substantive evidence that the leaders or the local leaders here in Malaysia is involved in such terrorist activities. Then I think it is from there that they will decide whether it is been listed under the terrorist group or whether it is just any NGO or any association that is specifically to unite all the scholars in the Muslim world. I would leave that to the Minister of Interior, Menteri Dalam Negeri, to decide whether on what ground, if it was going to be listed, and if it was not going to be listed, on what ground. But any member of Parliament like Lim Kit Siang can again give their opinion. So,
and what is your opinion on the recent arrest, the LTTE arrest? And unfortunately, it also involved DAP members. What is your opinion on that?
Well, I'm very clear on this that whoever is involved in any terrorist organization, whether involving that in terms of joining them, whether involving that in terms of funding them, whether involving them in terms of supporting whatever ideas that they are fighting for, is considered as part of supporting the group. Again, this is about national security. It's not about whether they are DAP, whether they are Muslims or whether they are non-Muslim, because terrorism cuts across all race and religion. So if the police is satisfied that few individuals, unfortunately, as you said it, are from the DAP members or even EXCO members, then it is not because they are DAP, it is because of their involvement. I think that is very clear that we should at any point combat any form of terrorism, funding it, supporting it, and it cuts across anyone in Malaysia particularly. So I do not see this as a party issue. I see this as a more important thing is to secure national security.
Datuk Sri, what is your take on Datuk Sri Hishamuddin's suggestion for, that we should move towards Bangsa Malaysia, but the first step would be uniting the Malays first?
I basically do not read his statement thoroughly. So, but what I can say is that if he is referring to the fact that Malays are the main or the prime, I think, factor in uniting the people in this country, then it could be right. But the question will be that what sort of Malay that we are going to unite the whole people? We came the long way here to tell the people all this while that we are not against Malay, we are not against Chinese, we are not against Indian. We are just against corrupt Malay, corrupt Chinese, corrupt Indian. So our struggle was to go against corruption. You cannot generalize to say that if all the Malay parties are united, then only we can talk about Bangsa Malaysia. The fact that one of the Malay party who are infected with corrupt practices should then be addressed first, should then be corrected first. And then I think only then we would have respect from other race in this country to accept the fact that Malays are the main or the main factor that unites all the other races. So I would suggest that Hishamuddin spell out or deliberate more on his ideas. If it comes together with what we are doing, then I think for the sake of Malaysia Baru, then we could share whatever ideas he has. But if he was just talking about Malay supremacy in terms of Malay as been understood in the previous way of thinking, then I do not think this is the way forward.
Datuk Seri, the government has made it clear before that all races are properly represented in the Pakatan Harapan cabinet, which some liked and some didn't. But my question is, do you think the majority population is properly represented in the cabinet?
Define majority.
The majority race in this country, the Malays. Do you think they are properly represented in the cabinet?
Define properly represented.
As in, well, because after the few events that we saw recently, especially after the Congress Marwah Melayu, so there are calls for only Malays to hold certain ministerial positions. So when you think of that, do you agree with that kind of suggestion?
Of course I don't agree. I don't agree the whole idea of Congress Marwah Melayu in the first place, because they are
even though your Prime Minister attended it.
He attended it, but did you hear what he said? That's the most question. It's more important to ask what did he say. He didn't concur with all these ideas about Melayu being everything. He said something that Melayu should stand up and compete within their own capabilities, and Melayu should be very respected, and they should strive and do not blame others for who they are or for what they are. Yes, he attended, but he didn't go along with their lines. He was telling something else to the people who attend there. So if you ask me that question, you see, we have come a long way to see Malaysia as a country that is united. I do not see why we still see things in racial lines. I do not see why we debate on the racial line. We should be debating on the line that this country needs a new injection, this country needs a new spirit, this country needs the way forward, and the fact that if you look behind our forefathers who founded this great nation, they are already aware that this country is built on multiracial.
Right, yeah.
Why is it that today it is as if the Malays are in shock to see all these things and started to debate about want to have their rights, they want to have their marwah? I don't see this as a new way forward. And that answers your question. Whether the question of representing, the question of whether they have been the majority. For us, the Malaysia Baru narrative is that we do not identify our fellow Malaysian based on race. We identify our fellow Malaysian as Malaysian, who has their rights and who wants to together build this this country and this nation. So I refuse to debate on these racial lines, and it will not bring us anywhere.
Fair enough.
We're just circling on the same line, same line, and now you're talking about Malaysia Baru, and why should we be dictated by this Congress who are not moving forward?
Right, you are. Okay, moving on from politics, Datuk Seri. After the Pakatan Harapan won GE14 last year, media practitioners were among those who celebrated the victory because Pakatan Harapan promised freedom of the press. What about your commitment towards press freedom?
I have been very consistent during my days in the parliament as a member of the opposition to advocate freedom of expression. But freedom of expression in any country doesn't come absolute freedom. It comes together with the value of responsibility. What you say, you must have responsibility to whatever you say. And we are committed. It is proof that in the last parliament session, we tried to withdraw the anti-fake law, anti-fake news law, but then it didn't go through the Senate. So means to say, anti-fake law is still as considered as an act. And we have said that anti-fake news law can be easily exploited. But this session, this time, for the second time, we withdraw the anti-fake news again in the parliament. That shows our commitment to freedom of expression, as not to transgress into by the need of law that we stop people to give their opinion. So I say that freedom of expression, especially media, should be guaranteed that ideas can be free flow, but with one value, that is responsibility. Yes. Now I know that when we open this to such freedom, we are taking a lot of risk because people criticize us freely today. But I think when you want to make some meaningful changes, you do have to face such risk. Now people ask me then, why are you opening this freedom at the cost of you being, criticized openly? Well, I say we have no choice. We do not return that through repressive law, or we do not react through repressive law. We came to do away with all this repressive law, but we should react that by competing with them through media also, as I'm doing today, telling the people this is exactly what is the real fact about things that they say to the government, and open up this debate so that people can, at the end of the day, have their own judgment to the two competing ideas. But that's not all. The most important thing, in the long run, we are educating the public. Yes, you are free. Yes, you can hear anything, but do that with responsibility. It is their duty, once they receive such news, that they should also check again. And by doing so, we are educating the public to be more responsible in using freedom of speech.
Right. And Datuk Seri, recently it was reported that a television channel would be created involving Malaysia, Turkey and Pakistan to address issues surrounding Islamophobia. Do you have an update on this?
I heard of that when Tun Mahathir met Erdogan and also the Prime Minister of Pakistan, Imran Khan. But there have not been any concrete follow-up on our side. I will have to maybe update again with the Prime Minister in terms of whether how does this idea about the three countries trying to form or set up a media where it handles or addresses the issue of Islamophobia. Until today, there is no concrete follow-up yet.
Not yet. Well, okay, but what are we, Malaysia, doing in addressing Islamophobia aside from that TV channel?
I would say there are two extremes that we are facing today in terms of putting the right narrative of Islam today. You have one extreme, those who practice radical Islam, those who radicalize the faith, thinking that by doing so they are serving their faith. That's one extreme. You have another extreme who are the Islamophobia. They have this unnecessary fear to something that is named Islam. So they will have like fear, they are going to be Islamized, they are going to be Arabized, and all this fear are called the Islamophobia. So the two extreme pressure the government today to look into the middle ground where the two extremes can meet and narrate what actually Islam is all about. One point to answer the Islamophobia, one point to mellow down the radicals. And in doing so, you need to have a policy. That policy is now being implemented with what we call the compassionate Islam. The compassionate Islam is that middle point where we want to bring the two extremes to join us to narrate Islam in a very compassionate way. And I think on my part as the Minister of Religious Affairs, we have already expressed our concern of this, and we want to have the compassionate policy to be practiced. And I think in the budget everyone knows that an allocation of 10 million have been allocated to us in order to promote such ideas and ideals. Yeah.
And Datuk Seri, there have been a few contradictions when it comes to replacing punitive Sharia law with educative approach. So does this sit well with the muftis or general Muslim hardliners?
If you look into the concept of justice, it doesn't only entails punishment. The other side of justice, which goes beyond punishment, is the rehabilitative or the reformative, or you just mentioned educative. In terms that now judges should have a space where they are not only binded by punishment, but they should have a space where they can correct those who are vindicted into something of an education or something that is of a rehabilitative sort of judgment. Yes, it goes and fits well with the ideas that we are now aspiring, that is the compassionate Islam. Yes, we do have maybe some response by others who felt that such rehabilitative approach will, in their perception, dilute the punishment that has been held in Islam. But I think at the end of the day, we should also look into the Prophet's way of passing its judgment. There have been instances where the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, encountered those who came to him and confessed about the wrong thing that he did. But the Prophet didn't, at that instance, punish him, but gave him way to correct himself and go back and try to be next time, don't do it. I think these are the things that we have in the philosophy of correction and rehabilitation. And Alhamdulillah, within the Sharia court, we are trying to move from that of a punitive per se to that of a rehabilitative. But that doesn't mean that punitive aspect is not operational anymore, because there are cases and circumstances or instances that a repeated offender, then they may need the punitive approach. But maybe first time offender or mitigating factor about why he committed such thing, then we could use the rehabilitative approach in order to correct his behavior through means like good behavior, born of good behavior, through means of other social activities, or report to maybe to Jabatan Kebajikan, for example. So all these ideas should be in place in terms of trying to shift from just being punitive to rehabilitative, and we are working very hard to make sure that Mahkamah Sharia have that priority.
Yeah. Datuk Seri, on Tabung Haji, how is Tabung Haji doing financially now after the restructuring?
Well, Tabung Haji is now on its second phase. The first phase was to balance the account, the fact that the assets and liabilities are not balanced. We have managed to balance that in 2018, where now the whole idea of the real situation of Tabung Haji is revealed in terms of no more hiding, or no more trying to cover, or no more trying to manipulate the numbers. We have set the account now on its right position, and I think the impairment have been corrected. The liabilities now is balanced comparing to the assets. Now the second phase is to sustain. First phase is to stop the bleeding, they say it. The second phase is to sustain. Sustain means, number one, we must put our utmost priority to the depositors, 9 million depositors. Most of those depositors who are a potential pilgrimage. That's number one concern. Number two concern is to make sure that Tabung Haji pays good dividend based on the performance of our businesses and our investment. And thirdly is to maintain and improve our services to the pilgrimage, to the Hujjaj. So I think these three comes under sustainability of Tabung Haji, and of course that comes together with trying to renegotiate, relook into all the contracts, relook into all the financial needs, so that we can save the cost of operating Tabung Haji. I think all that comes under one phase that is called sustainability of Tabung Haji, and we are now concentrating on that second phase.
Okay, one last question from me. Do you agree with increasing the minimum age of marriage to 18 years old, since our neighbour Indonesia has already done it?
We have made a roundtable discussion with all the scholars and the muftis on putting in this limit of 18 years old. We receive a lot of responses, and in as far as the Islamic administration is concerned, we do have some restriction in terms of our decision is not binded to the whole state, the other states, because they have their own jurisdiction, and we cannot say like, look, you have to put the limit of 18 years old. We cannot do that. But in terms of its policy, we believe that putting the limit of 18 years old will end child marriage, and we support that very much. It's just that there are instances where if someone wants to, because there's a clause that those who are under 18, if they want to get married for certain reason, what is the exit clause? What happens if there is no clause and they still got married? How are you going to punish them? These are very technical issues, but on the whole, as far as the policy is concerned, we support the 18 years old cap marriage.
All right. Thank you so much, Datuk Seri, for coming all the way to Balai Berita NSTP here today. It's been a great pleasure. For more reports, do check our newspaper tomorrow or our news portal at nst.com.my or subscribe to our NST e-paper. Right. That's all from me, Arfa Yunus. Assalamualaikum and have a good day, everyone.